Hey, Sam, welcome to the show.
Hi, Ed. Thanks very much. Glad to be here.
Excellent. I'm so excited to be here with you. Your book is phenomenal. Work the System really changed my life. So for the listeners out there that don't know the Work the System and your background, why don't you give us kind of a 2 or 3 minute background story of how this all came to fruition?
Sure. I had the normal dysfunctional childhood. I don't need to go into it. And went into my teen years, and I bounced around from job to job to job to job, dropped out of college 3 times. Got in a little trouble, not a lot, and bounced around until I was about 35. I had some good jobs. I had I won't go into it, but I had some film distribution job. I had a project engineer job with electric utility and so forth. But at the age of 35, I was divorced, had a couple of kids, sole custody of those kids, had just bought a business, and at the age of 35, and it was a call center, a small call center. It really doesn't matter what it was. The story is that I bought a business with some employees, and it was a nightmare. 80 to 100-hour work weeks, and I did that for 15 years, a decade and a half, until I was 50. And at the age of 50, I had an insight about what I was doing wrong, because as I was getting ready to lose the business because I wasn't going to be able to make a payroll, I asked myself, what have I been doing wrong with my life? It wasn't going so swell, and it was halfway to the 100 mark. And what I realized was I wasn't looking at my business and life in enough detail. And I talk about, in this book I wrote, Work the System, I talk about going one layer deeper. And what I did right at the brink of losing my business, in the middle of the night, literally, in a flash of insight, I went one layer deeper, and I saw what I was doing wrong. And what it was I wasn't seeing my life and my business as it truly was. And what I was seeing in the way 99% of people see it, and they see their businesses this way, they see their families this way, they see their lives this way, is that life is a big swirling mass of sights, sounds, and events, and it's our job to fire kill through that and do the best we can, and hopefully we get lucky and we get a lot of money and a lot of free time. And of course, that's what we all want, is to have more money and more free time to do what we want to do. And what I realized was life is not that way. Actually, to go a layer deeper, the way life is and the way my business was specifically at that time, and the insight was related exactly to my business was, and I'll talk about my business, is that night, late that night, I realized my business was a collection of independent systems, processes, how we answer the phone in the office, how we handle a complaint, how we hire people. None of those have a relation to any of the others. Okay, and you could take the human body. What really does your foot have to do with your right kidney? Truth is, you could live without either one of those and you'd go on living. The only connection is that they're connected. They belong to the same body. And the same in a business. So a business is a collection of independent systems, not necessarily related to each other. How does cleaning the refrigerator in a break room have anything to do with the copier? Or how does hiring somebody have to do with firing somebody, or answering the phone or anything? They're all independent systems, and this is critical because as we grew up from the 60s, we were taught that, hey, we're all one, we're all connected and everything. But in fact, that's an entirely dysfunctional way to look at things, because it's not true. We are a collection of independent systems, and the same in our bodies, and the same in our cars, and the same with our limousine companies. How the phone is answered has nothing to do with how things are dispatched, for example. So what I did was I came down to the business. I made that payroll I thought I was going to miss and lose my company, and we started looking at the business as a collection of independent systems. And when you do that, these processes, you look at these processes separately, you can actually fix them. You're not waiting for the hand of God to come in and save the day, or hire a new manager that will be so smart and save everything and just have some secret way of making your business non-chaotic. You actually, as the owner, can go through your business piece by piece, like the pieces are coming in on a conveyor belt, and fixing the pieces one by one. And that's what we did. It took me 5 years to fix the company, but 3 years were caught up with a lawsuit that didn't have anything to do with my revelation. And then another year was used up figuring it out. I if I was faced with this again, I could have fixed this company in 1 year. And what happened? Well, I went from 80 to 100 hours a week to 2 hours, and I've been working 2 hours a week for the last 13 years, and my income is 20 times what it used to be. And believe me, that puts me solidly in the 1%. So my life is a life of having more money than I need and more time than I could ever have dreamed of having. And that's what we do with our companies, the people that read my book, the group coaching we do, the one-on-one consulting, and the internet product we have, is we teach people to get to that place. And so the subtitle of the book is, well, it's Work the System, the simple mechanics of making more and working less. And bottom line, to finish this up, is it is a simple thing, and it starts with just an insight. It starts with looking at your life in a different way. In fact, your listeners could go to workthesystem.com, and down in the right-hand corner, Ed, of the front page is Work the System testimonials. And just watching those testimonials gives an idea of how this works. And we kind of had fun with that, and it's kind of a fun video. So that's what we do, and we do it in a variety of ways. And I just have fun with this. I do work more than 2 hours, but it's always creative stuff, writing and doing this. I love doing this. I love talking to audiences, and I love just hanging out with my staff and having fun and creating new products. But it's less than 2 hours a week to run my call center. And it is the same call center I bought 29 years ago in the same place.
Wow, so 100 hours down to 2 hours. Take me into, when you say breaking things down into systems and answering the phone and dispatching, how does that actually work? Like, if I wanted to do this right now in a limo business, how would I actually do that?
Well, you go download my book for free at the site, workthesystem.com. That would be the first step. And I'm a very mechanical guy. I do things in steps. So that's step number one. Step number two is probably read the book. But here's how it would unfold. Is the book is in 3 parts, and I'll just explain this. The first part is getting it, and so that insight I had in the middle of the night was to see my limousine business as a collection of independent systems. And yes, your staff, your drivers, your dispatcher, your receptionist are systems. Let's get mechanical. Let's get down and dirty. The car is a system. The various cars are a system. The maintenance on those cars is a system. How we advertise is a process, too. So you see your limousine business as a collection of independent processes, because you know what? That's exactly what it is. And the owner gets this insight, and it usually comes in a flash, and some of our listeners are getting it right now. Some of it will take a while. Some of them will have to read the book. But when the insight comes, and I call it getting it, that's the beginning of a life change. And so you go into the business the morning after you have the insight, and you start looking at your business. Oh, my God, how we answer the phone does indeed have nothing to do with doing the payroll. Or how do we quote our rides? I mean, what is our system for coming up with a steady, sensible quote? I don't run a limousine business, so I'm just speculating. We've handled taxi companies in the past, which is not remotely really related, but let me use that. Of course, there's a dispatching process, and of course, there are schedules for drivers, and the cars have to be maintained. The limousine company owner would start looking at his business as this collection of independent processes. And then if I was consulting, and we do have a consulting business, the first thing I would say is, what's your biggest problem? Oh, we can't seem to hire decent drivers, or we just can't show up on time. I don't know. Again, I don't have a limousine company. I don't know what those problems are, but every one of your owners would say, no, these are our top 3 problems in this order. So what you do is you look at that first problem, isolate it into a system that creates that problem, and maybe the problem is probably the problem is a byproduct of a written system that doesn't exist. And so you take that process, whatever that problem is, and you'd write out how it unfolds. And let me just take a break here and explain something that's important, and it's I think our listeners will find it interesting, is everything that happens in life, every result we have was preceded by a process. Number 1 happened, number 2 happened, number 3 happened, number 4 happened, and that equaled a result. Or maybe there were 10,000 steps. And I use the example of, how did you get from home to work today? Well, I went down this road and I turned right, and then I put my foot on the gas, and then I da-da-da-da-da. And you could break that process of getting from home to work, say from A to B, into 4 steps or 10,000 steps, depending on how detailed you wanted to get. But what we do is we don't shuffle around bad results of unmanaged systems, which is how most people run their businesses. What we do is we spend our time in the 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 leads to 2, 2 leads to 3. That we spend our time all day long working on our processes. Hence the title of the book, Work the System. And so we take that biggest problem, we'd write down the process that's involved with either leading up to the problem, or maybe the problem is a byproduct of a system leading up to another desired result. And we get it down on paper, and we all analyze it. The drivers analyze it if it has to do with them. Whoever's involved with it, whoever's the front line people, works with management to go through and say, aha, well, what if we did this over here? Would this eliminate this problem forever? And 9 times out of 10, it's some simple little thing, and it will. And so you attack the biggest problem first. And ours here happened to be making a deposit. I talk about it in my book. Getting our deposits, we get payments in the mail and getting them up to the bank. We couldn't get that right. We were losing deposits. We were taking a veterinary's check from Virginia and crediting it to a doctor in California, which creates 2 problems. We couldn't get it right. We attacked that problem. It took my 2 managers and me, way back when I was pretty small. It took us 8 hours of time over a 3-day period. And we even lost a $3,000 deposit under one of my manager's car seats a few weeks before. And it was just problem after problem after problem. We came up with a written procedure in 8 hours, and we haven't had a problem since, and that was 13 years ago. And one of the products was I didn't do the deposits anymore. And if you do the math, I've saved 2 hours a week for 13 years. It's darn close to a year's worth of 40-hour work weeks. So we solve that problem, and so your limo company, you solve your biggest problem, and you go to your second biggest problem. And the leader, the one that gets this, is able to convince the staff of this new way of looking at the business, and you fix your business. And when we go in consulting, we don't have a consulting job, and we work with multinational companies. We're never there more than 6 months. It doesn't take long to do. A multinational we're working with one multinational with offices in 65 countries, and we're about 4 months into the 6-month thing. We've changed their whole culture, 200 and some people. No, it's way more than that now. It's a $50 million company. We've changed the culture in 4 months. So a limo company might have, I know that some of them are very small and some of them are very large, but let's take a 50-employee limo company. That kind of company could be changed in 4 to 6 months easily to where the profits are great and the owner has a life again. And what happens is we don't worry about increasing sales, although that will happen. As we talked before we started the show, Ed, we take the existing cash flow and put more of it on the bottom line, significantly more. And I have a lot of people who have just done it reading the book and done it themselves. That's the way it works.
Well, how would say a small operator, majority of this industry is really, I'd say, below 10 vehicles. Around, say, below the $100,000 to $1 million mark is the majority of this industry. What advice would you have for someone in that range? Even just how to answer the phone, like you said, how do you manage deposits so you don't lose stuff and keep tracking of invoicing? Let's go dirt simple, and everybody can, work out from there. Let's talk about answering the phone. So let's say you've got 10 cars and you're doing, I don't know, let's say you're a $500,000 company, and I don't know what the number of cars, how it relates to the gross revenues. I'm sure there's a connection generally speaking, but let's just say you're a small to medium-sized company and you've got 3 people that might be answering the phone. And truth is, and the people that are listening to me know this, every one of those 3 people is probably answering it differently depending on how they like to answer and what their mood is that day, because that's 9 out of 10 businesses. So just to use this as an example, what if you took those 3 people and the owner of the company and they sat down at a table and you said, let's figure out the best way to answer the phone, and you just sat there for an hour arguing back and forth about it. Well, I do it this way because, and I do it that way because, and what if after an hour you all came up with a small phrase, good morning or good afternoon, depending on the time of day. Good morning, ABC Limos Company. This is Dolores.
May I help you? Believe me, there's dozens of ways to answer the phone. But what if all four of those people sitting around the table came up with, they all agreed this was probably the best way to do it. And then they all agreed they would all answer it that way. So you've taken a very random process that could be affected by everything from who's answering it to whether the person that answers it had a hangover or not. Or a new person came in and substituted and it didn't have a clue. So you've got a 7-step process for answering the phone. And this is what you've got. You've got a consensus that this is a 98% perfect way of answering the phone. And so all of you agree to answer it that way. Even with the person who's never answered before, you hand them a piece of paper, and everybody answers it perfectly 100% of the time. Okay? Now, you can't measure the increase in business that will produce, but if you're smart, you realize that over time it will. Now, Centratel, that was one of the first things. Centratel is my call center. One of the first ones we did was answer the phone the same way every single time. And we made tweaks in it after a while. Somebody would come along after a week and say, what if we just tweak this, how we're answering a little bit this way? And everybody agreed, and then so we're always making the process a little bit better, a little bit better, and a little bit better. So now I've explained this illustration. Now let's take this for the limo company and go to how the dispatching is done. And then let's go to the advertising. And let's go to the training of a new driver. Here's something for you. Let's say you've got a new driver coming in. What is the training process? If I had a limo company, I would have what we call a working procedure, and most people call them SOPs, standard operating procedure. I would hand the new limo driver a sheet of paper that says, you can never say this. And these are the recommended phrases. You will always say, sir. I don't know what the standard is these days for these things. And I apply this to a restaurant. How much time would it take with your new servers to come up with what I call working procedure of phrases to never use, things to never say? For instance, don't walk up to me and my wife server and say, how are you guys today? Because that's mildly insulting to my wife. Most people accept it. It's kind of and don't get all uptight, man, about it, kind of an attitude about it. But the truth is, there are better ways to address a man and a woman. How are you two today? And don't leave us the food and say enjoy. I'm sorry, that went out of cuteness 20 years ago. And there's all kinds of things you can say and not say in a restaurant setting. And I know for sure in a limousine setting with your client out there, there's a whole lot of things you don't want to say and a whole lot of things that are recommended. How many of our operators out there hand a sheet of paper, a little study guide to the new driver that they could read in 15 minutes that would prevent all kinds of inefficiencies out there that would lead to another engagement later on? Rather than them just calling some other company. How do you make yourself special? That's how you make yourself special. And so the niche we form with every company we work is, okay, let's say, I don't know how many limo companies there are in New York. I hesitate to guess, but what if we were truly the best limo company in New York City? See, and the way you get there is to get all your drivers and all your people within the company to handle everything that comes up perfectly every single time. And you can't do it without documentation. Boring but true. There's a little heavy lifting here. My answering service is the highest quality answering service by a variety of statistics in the United States, and I have over 2,000 competitors. I don't care whether it's how much we charge, how much we make per minute, our error rate. We processed in the last quarter 13,500 and some odd messages for every error we committed. I mean, there's just nobody that can get anywhere close to that. Can you imagine taking a name and a number and processing an emergency call and doing 13,500 of them for almost 1,000 different accounts and having one error? Maybe a phone number was taken wrong, or maybe there was something or another. So what you do is you get all your processes perfect within your company, and we had about 300 here. You get them all perfect, and you get them executed that way every single time. And the thing I asked myself, I know I'm going on and on here, but let me finish up. The thing I asked myself late that night as I was getting ready to lose my business is, what the heck? I'm just going to have this theory that if I fix all the parts of my business, if all the parts of my business will be perfect, I'm going to guess that my company will be perfect. And I didn't know that night if that was true or not. I honestly asked myself, but I thought, what have I got to lose? And I'm here to tell you, after 13 years of doing this, if you get all the parts of your business operating smoothly and perfectly, you will have a smooth and perfect business. And my definition of a business is you don't have to show up. The owner doesn't have to show up. And that's how I am here. I show up because I feel like it. I love my crew. And I come down here and I have a staff meeting once a week, and I pay all the bills, usually out of the house. That's my 2 hours a week. Otherwise, I just hang out, and my crew runs the entire business. And if I wanted to sell it, I could sell it. I don't have to say, well, you can buy my business, but I have to go along with it. And I know a lot of your operators, if they got sick, I just know it because I know small business like the back of my hand. We've worked with so many. A lot of your operators, and I say operators in the sense of owner-operator, if they get sick or they get run over by the proverbial truck, the business is really, really going to suffer because they got their fingers into every nuance of it. And that's very heroic, and it makes a person feel important. But the truth is, that doesn't get you a lot of money, and it doesn't get you a lot of freedom. And that's it in a nutshell. That's the book in a nutshell, actually, Ed.
What would you say to the operator that says, well, that's great. Well, how do I do that? I own 3 cars. What could I do to work myself out of the business?
Well, that's what you do is you take a look at your business and you say to yourself, well, you really do need to get this get it insight. You got to get it, that it is a collection of systems. And then once you get that, you ask yourself, what is my biggest problem today? I mean, what is the problem that keeps coming up over and over? And if you truly see your business as a collection of systems, then you will attack that separate system, and that's attackable because it doesn't have anything to do with anything else. You actually can handle that problem because it's not connected to everything else. Let me ask you a question, Ed. What is the typical biggest problem for an owner-operator with, say, 3 cars?
It could be any number of things. It could be, I'd say lack of effective marketing is probably the biggest thing. But from an operations standpoint, probably that they're running themselves ragged. They're working 80 to 100 hours a week, driving, answering the phones, doing everything, trying to be everything to everybody.
Okay, so I have 3 words for this guy or this woman, and that is automate, delegate, discard. So you go through each one of your little processes. So the guy's answering the phone, and then he's driving the car. Which one of these can be automated, delegated, or discarded? And believe me, most of it can. All of it can, ultimately. Will I have to hire somebody else? Maybe. But a lot of times you take the people you've got and you make it work. Now, if it's a guy and his wife and they've got 1 car, sorry, you're going to have to look at getting another car and some help, because you are doing the work. And the definition of a job, listen to this, the definition of a job, new definition for everybody, you have to show up. All right? You have to show up. The definition of a business, you don't have to show up. And in both cases, the money is flowing, but in one you have to show up, and that's a job. And I don't care if you are the owner-operator, it's a job. And the only problem is now you've got to do your own payroll, you've got to make sure you show up so the job gets done, et cetera, et cetera. And then if you own a business, it all takes care of itself. So one by one, you look at your business one by one, meaning process by process by process. You segregate your processes and attack them one at a time. So I explained about our deposit process down here of getting the money to the bank, that I was spending 2 hours. I spent 2 hours a week, along with my 2 managers, for 15 years. That's 15. I spent 2 hours a week doing that, and with 8 hours of work, I never did it again. But I spent time doing, boring but true, working on the processes and doing some documentation. Truth is, what happened, the fact that I wasn't going to have to do it again was a surprise to me, but a week after we put the new process into effect, we had a 53-step process. First you do this, second you do this, third, and it was all, it was dirt simple. It was just long. I actually thought to myself, I don't need to do this anymore. I'll give it over here to this third person, and let them do it. And in fact, that's what I did. I brought one other person in from the office who wasn't even a manager. I said, you do this from now on. And I handed her the paper, 2 sheets, 53 steps. I said, you do this from now on. And we had written it in a way that anybody could understand it. And I remember her saying, well, what is it? And I said, just read it and do it. And I didn't even help her. And she sat down and she did it all by herself. And she had some suggestions of some things that weren't clear in there. Then we tweaked it a little bit. As I said, we're always working on our processes and make them a little better and a little better. But I was down to 98 hours a week. Okay? And then we went process by process by process over a period of quite a while as we figured it out. And my work week dropped down to 60. It dropped down to 40. And it could go down to 0 now if I wanted somebody else to pay the bills, but I don't trust anybody else to pay the bills. We run $250,000 a month through this business. I'll pay the bills. I want to make sure everybody's getting paid correctly, and we need everything that we're paying for. And then I like to have a staff meeting. Yesterday we had a staff meeting in here, my 10 managers. We sat around and we BS'd, and you know what? We talked about maybe we're going to build our own building finally, and that was all in general terms. But mainly we were talking about I'm going fishing with my sales manager tomorrow up on the Deschutes River, and we're going to catch some big rainbow trout. And then everybody's giving everybody a hard time. We sat in here for a half hour just having fun, and they all went back to work. Honest to God, that's what our staff meetings are, because we've worked on the processes of communication. We don't have to have meetings to get information out. We have a very sophisticated voicemail and email and communications process in here that we don't have to have meetings. And that's one of our big advertisements for our consulting is, hey, executive, how would you like to not have meetings anymore ever? Oh, my God. Some of these guys are in meetings 8 hours a day. And it's a waste of meetings are a horribly inefficient waste of time, generally speaking. So anyway, back to the point is, what that person would do being run ragged is what is the biggest thing that's running me ragged today and every day, and you isolate that. And maybe it is driving the car. And there's a discussion in my book about a fishing boat captain up in Homer, Alaska. We went up to catch some halibut, and this guy loved to fish. At least he used to love to fish until he started a business. And he got a boat, and his wife was running the bed and breakfast, and so we flew up, 3 of us flew up, stayed in his bed and breakfast, $50 a night. We went out fishing at 4:30 in the morning, 20 miles out to sea after flying through the chop and bouncing around the electric reels on the rods. Each of us caught our 2 halibut. The captain was not a pleasant person, and it took us about 4 hours. I caught 1 fish, and one of the other guys caught 3 fish, and I said, hey, I came all the way up to Homer, Alaska to catch my limit of 2 halibut. I only caught 1. He said, doesn't matter. Frank over here caught yours, and we're going back to dock, which kind of annoyed me. He couldn't get back to dock fast enough. We pulled the boat up, threw the fish in the tubs. The poor captain and the assistant that he had went over and cleaned the fish in their waders, and it's raining. And then he all went up to the house, and then his poor wife had to fix his food, and then he had to do the books that night. And that was his life 7 days a week, and he hated his life. And that, I don't care whether you're talking about a sea captain or a roofer or an owner-operator of a limousine company, that is not the life that's not why you did this. That's not why you went into business. And so what we do is we free people up from that. And that's 9 out of 10 businesses is just a job, and it's a nightmare, and it is 80 hours a week, and you're just getting by. And maybe the hand of God will come down and help me, or something will happen, and suddenly I'll be a huge company. Sorry, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. And the only difference between a large successful business, the main difference between a large successful business and a small struggling business is this. And nobody out there will be able to guess this until I say it. And what it is documentation. The processes are documented, and the owner is spending his time in the 1, 2, 3, 4 part, perfecting the processes 8 hours a day, because the results will take care of themselves if the processes are perfect. And yes, you need direction, and we have certain, there are 3 documents that we use. I won't go into that here, but you have to have direction, you have to have a basis for decision making, and then you have to have all these processes written out and approved and even created by the frontline staff, by the drivers, by the dispatcher. It's what we call a bottoms-up process, where these processes are put down on paper by the frontline people with the under the auspices of management, and then you get buy-in on the front line, by the way, if they're part of creating the company and creating the processes. And that's the way it works. So that's what we have to do, is separate the business into processes in our heads, and then we ask what the biggest problem process is. We fix the process, we document it. Sorry, you got to do it. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you do the next one, and you do the next one, and you do the next one, and that's it. That's the whole story. That's how it works.
Just so people don't think you're blowing smoke up their ass, can you talk for a minute or so about how bad it really was for you?
Yeah, when I had this revelation, what I call a mini insight, I think I had about, 16 people work for me. It was a very small business. And I couldn't keep people. People weren't happy. There was all kinds of infighting in the office. And one day we did things this way, and another day we did things that way. I was bouncing checks. I lost the house. Meanwhile, remember, I'm the parent of a single custodial parent of 2 teenagers by this time, and we lost our house. I had the divorce. Then we lost the car. My kids are in high school over across town. I don't have a house or a car. We're living in the back office. I'm working 80 to 100 hours a week. I was on Ritalin. I had half a dozen different kinds of antidepressants. I had no friends. I like the opposite sex, but there was none of that going on because I didn't have time. I was literally working 100 hours a week, and my time was spent between work and my kids. And I did take care of my kids the best I could, but they didn't see much of me. But at one point, we were all living in the back office. It's a 1,200 square foot office, and then there's a little back room with bunk beds, and my teenage kids are sleeping in there. And one night, my daughter says, "Daddy," she's 14, "Daddy, I can't live this way anymore." She's crying in the bunk bed at 11 o'clock at night, and I'm laying there on a mattress on the floor. It was a nightmare. It was horrible, and I wanted to kill myself, except I couldn't because I had the 2 kids. And I just can't express in words how horrible my life was, and I was about to lose my business at 50 years of age with no real skills, and instead I started looking at my business in a different way, and in the snap of a finger, things turned around, and they got better and better and better and better, and this is my life. I own half a dozen small businesses. My wife drives a Audi A8, brand new, beautiful car. She's a beautiful woman. She's my age. I'm in great shape. I ski, I hike, I read, I write books, I do everything I want to do. I have a perfect life. Am I unhappy sometimes? Of course. Do I get angry sometimes? Yes, I do. I'm not living in heaven yet, but I'll tell you, having more money than I need and more time than I need, it sure makes those road bumps a lot easier to roll over. But we're flying back to New York next week, and we're going to go up through Lake Placid and hang out at the Mirror Lake Inn for a couple of nights and drive back down through the Adirondacks and come back here. And I just got back from India. And why did I go to India? Just really for the hell of it. I spent 10 days over there, made some friends, and spoke to a couple multinationals while I was over there. We probably drummed up some business, and we're headed back to Bulgaria in another 30 days on another job. I just do this because I want to. I don't have to go to these jobs. I just like doing it. And I like doing this kind of thing, Ed. And I like getting emails every day from people saying, "Thank you for changing my life." I'm getting to a little bit of braggadocio here, but it does work. The thing does work. And if your listeners want to go to workthesystem.com, they can download either they can download the PDF and the audio for free there. So anyway, that's kind of how it works. Did I miss anything at all?
No, this has been great. I really appreciate your time. This has been awesome. I mean, the book, I can't speak highly enough of it. And if you are at all struggling with your business, you got to go to workthesystem.com and download those books and the audio. I mean, obviously you're listening to this, you like audio, so grab the audio book and take a listen. It could change your life.
Yeah, the website's got some good stuff too. As I mentioned, look at the testimonials. They say a lot about what happens. But also the FAQ page I'm particularly proud of because it kind of goes from A to Z through this whole process we talked about today, Ed. And this does have to do with keeping control of your teenagers. okay, and channeling them and helping them, and because it has to do with the most fundamental element of reality, and that is our lives are collections of systems. And I don't care if it's the love relationship you're in, or your health, or your business. Everything is a collection of independent systems, and yes, of course, they all work together. They don't all work together, but a lot of them do. And but you can fix your life by going after things one thing at a time. There is no magic button out there that you're going to push, and all of a sudden your life is perfect. And you're a small operator, and you got 3 cars, and your wife and you are working 80 hours a week. You're going to have to do some extra work on the documentation and thinking about the processes of the business, or you're never going to get big. And the big ones, the big guys have done this already, although they'd be hard-pressed to explain how they did it. That's what they did. They worked on the processes of their business, and they automated, they delegated, and they discarded stuff that wasn't necessary. And that might be a bad driver, okay? It might be, you might have 6 drivers, and one is a pain in the butt. Hey, get rid of them, because the simple solution is usually the correct solution, and rather than try to change somebody's horrible personality, I'm sorry, they just have to get the axe. And all 5 of the other drivers will be patting you on the back and thanking you.
Right.
So it is a simple thing, but you've got to see your processes one at a time. You can't see your whole business as a huge mishmash, because there's no way to fix that. The hand of God is not going to come down. The bank probably isn't going to give you another loan, and you're not going to hire a magical manager to come in, because they're already running their own great business. You've got to be the magical manager. You've got to do it yourself, and it does take a little work up front. We call it heavy lifting. There's a little heavy lifting at the beginning, and that's your documentation.
Got it. This has been great, Tim. I really appreciate your time.
All right. I love to talk, as you can tell, Ed, and I really am flattered that you had me on. I love people who are down and dirty. My background is blue collar, and I love getting down and dirty and getting the work done. So that's great. And good luck to your listeners out there.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I will link up to the book and where to get all the free information in the blog post. So thank you, Sam.
Yeah.
I really appreciate your time.